Google and websites are now more important than they've ever been, which is funny because all the content I see from marketers says, Google's dead. You now need to optimize for ChatGPT. They're fundamentally missing the point, because where do you think it gets all of its data from? Please don't just rely on Instagram. Please stop doing it. You have to build a much more diverse ecosystem. If you want it to rank online, then you have to hit a few key points with Google to this core principle called expertise, experience, authority, and trust. It will be shown to the relevant people. There's lots of snake oil salesmen out there selling AI optimization services and AEO and generative engine optimization. That's nonsense. AI is going to be the overriding thing from my perspective, but also let's not forget that the more AI there is in stuff, the more people will crave the human touch.
Welcome to Inside Aesthetics, the world's leading podcast for cosmetic practitioners and business owners.
Our podcasts are aimed at medical professionals and should not be used to make medical, legal, or financial decisions. You should get an appropriately tailored piece of advice from a professional in your country.
To show your support and stay up to date with our latest episodes, click the follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're watching our episodes on YouTube, hit the subscribe button as well as the bell icon.
If you're interested in joining our online community, being a guest on the podcast, or would like to work with us, all of our contact details are in the show notes. And now, let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome to Inside Aesthetics, the world's leading podcast for injectors and cosmetic businesses. It is a special night because we're back with our friend Rick O'Neill, all the way from the UK. Rick was with us many, many years ago. It feels like ancient history when Rick was on with us last, and we did 4 episodes called The Deep Digital Dive, where we did a deep look into SEO, websites, and a little bit about AI. It was a bit early then for AI.
Feels like it's been a whole world has changed since we spoke last, especially in relation to AI. It's ChatGPT this, ChatGPT that, AI agents integrating our world. So we're here to unpack all of that and more today with Rick.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. So first of all, how are you? We haven't seen you in a while.
All good, you two jokers. It's great to be back with you after all this time. I feel like I'm back with family. So thanks for having me back on.
It's our pleasure. Now, you just come back from MCAS. Just tell us briefly, how was it? How mad was it?
It was very mad. It was very MCAS. 22,000 people in a hot box. What could possibly go wrong? But it was fascinating to be there. Obviously, I only get a potato pass, so don't ask me about the symposiums or anything. I couldn't tell you. But in terms of the conversations that were happening from my perspective, like on the business side, I think people are waking up to the fact that that is almost as important as the clinical. So that's good for me. And there were a lot of talks and presentations going on outside of the symposiums on things like AI, things like digital strategy, which is all good for me because that's what my whole focus is. And it's good to see it getting part of a stage. I mean, I personally still dream of being in the massive amphitheater talking about this stuff at MCAS. I'm going to make it happen. If you're listening, MCAS, say hi. Because I think it needs to get some sort of equal footing on the agenda from now forwards. And we're going to talk about why.
Yeah, totally. Well, before we get into all of that, just remind our listeners, about your background, how did you get into this crazy world of marketing, the aesthetic space, and tell us a little bit about Look, Touch and Feel and what you guys do and what kind of partners you work with.
Yeah, sure. So I always struggle to know how far back I should go, but I've been doing this kind of thing a long time. So 26 years in online marketing. Literally built my first website in 1994, actually. So even before that. But that was the year the World Wide Web was invented, if you don't know. And when I first had clients, there was no such thing as email. I would leave messages in mailing groups. So I am proper old, chaps. But if you fast forward to about 2008-9, I'd already sold an marketing agency, and I was not intending to create another one. I was just doing a few freelance consultancy projects. But my first client was a plastic surgeon back then. And that project went really well. He introduced me to more surgeons, ended up meeting people from Allergan, needed help, built a team, and accidentally created my second agency in my life, which became known as LTF, which, as you said, it actually stands for Look, Touch and Feel, but now we're just sort of LTF. That's what people call us. And relatively quickly, we realized that the niche of medical aesthetics, cosmetic surgery, firstly needed our help, and secondly was actually really fascinating in terms of patient behavior and how we could bring our experience to bear in the market to help connect HCPs and consumers, and then later on connect medical brands, products, devices with HCPs. So that's what we've grown up to do. We've focused entirely on that for years now. We work with two broad types of customer. So that might be a pharmaceutical or medical device company on the one side, and on the other side, it's practice owners, clinic owners, med spa owners in multiple countries now. So North America, Canada, UK, Australia, a couple of countries in Europe, and now in the Middle East as well. So we're almost global, or you might say multinational. And the team is now 30 people in LTF, and we have pruned that team like a bonsai tree. So they are now absolute ninjas at what they do. And these days, now that I've got an amazing ops director, my job is all about education, basically, and making sure that I stay right at the edge of what's going on so that I can translate things for our clients and for the team. But then also my team, who are younger and more energetic than me, they keep me at the forefront and keep me in check. And often we've actually just filmed a new sort of promotional video for LTF, and the concept of it is I'm on stage giving a talk, but actually I've got an earpiece in and it's my team telling me what to say. So they're always there with me, kind of keeping me honest, keeping me at the front of what's going on. And yeah, right now our whole focus is on how much has changed in the last couple of years in sort of two main ways. One is how patients are behaving, and we'll get into what I mean by that. And the other is the digital landscape has changed quite a lot as well since we last spoke, for sure.
100%. So it's a great prelude to what we're going to be talking about. And I will tease that we are also launching our new app. It's called IA Community, if you guys haven't heard of it. And Rick will be doing an exclusive extra episode that will live on our app. So that will also be free, but it'll only be available on our new app. So look out for that one. And
yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
It's in the hand of the development gods at the moment. Yeah.
Come on, Apple and Google.
I guess before we continue on, just maybe a bit of a disclaimer or just a bit of FYI. We understand that advertising rules and what we can and can't say will differ from countries and regions. So, before you start putting stuff up on your Instagram that might be breaking the law based on some of the things you might hear in this podcast today, just make sure you check with your local regulations before you do that.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah. So, Rick, you said that a lot has changed in the last 12 to 24 months. It feels like it's a bit of a quickening at the moment. The faster things go, the faster things tend to happen. So, at a high level, before we kind of drill down into more detail, what have been the biggest development or changes in the digital aesthetic space in the last 12 to 24 months?
Yeah. So there's sort of two intertwined things, which I alluded to a minute ago. So, and they're happening at the same time. So one is how the patient is behaving when they're doing their research. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like, how do they select their practitioner? How do they learn about the treatments available, etc.? So that's kind of behavioral, but then it's happening at the same time and driven by digital changes. And the biggest digital change, probably no surprise, but it's the introduction of artificial intelligence into the process of searching for answers. And that's happening across lots of different apps and platforms, mostly Google, but now people are going direct into chat-based language models like ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, if you're feeling spicy, to get some answers on aesthetic treatments, etc. So these things are happening at the same time, and then sort of coming down through those two things is like a generational change in behavior. So younger generations use social as a search engine, or they might default first to a chat-based tool instead of Google, which for a lot of people has suggested that maybe Google will die or Google's irrelevant. But what most people miss is that all of those chat tools get their data from Google. So Google is actually more relevant than ever. And I also remembered, I listened back to a bit of our last podcast episode to see what kind of predictions I had made. And I was dead wrong on one of them.
Okay.
And I'm happy about that. I'm happy because I didn't want to be right. And that was when we were talking last time and we were chatting about AI. It was actually I don't think ChatGPT had even been released at that point. I had wondered and mused whether websites would still be relevant in a few years, whether a website would just get replaced with like a chat interface or something. Now, maybe that will happen, but right now, websites are more important than they've ever been in history, because where does ChatGPT and others get its data from? Websites. It only has two places to go to get its answer when you ask it something. It's either the training content it was given before it was released, which went up to a certain point. I think originally it was 2021. It was like it swallowed the internet up till 2021. But then if it doesn't know the answer from that, it goes out to the open web. And what powers that? Websites and the Google search algorithm. So Google and websites are now more important than they've ever been, which is funny because all the content I see from marketers says, Google's dead. You now need to optimize for ChatGPT. And they're fundamentally missing the point, because where do you think it gets all of its data from? It gets it from Google. So it's a lot of fascinating colliding factors going on. And I guess we'll try to break some of that down as we chat. But the overarching message is it is really important, even though it might feel we're going off into like geekdom here and nerd territory. If you're a medic, it's really important to understand this, because the ones that do understand it are going to grow for the next 3 to 5 years. They're going to be able to scale their business. They are going to be able to attract the right kind of patients and enough of them over and above their competitors. So it might feel like, why do I need to know this? But it's really, really going to make a big difference to your business for the next few years.
Is that true for all regions, Middle East, America, Australia, Europe? It's all the same kind of trend that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm basing it on is two things. There's studies that Google do themselves, and Google's in almost every country. And it's also our own client data. So as far as we're aware, it's global, these shifts and these patterns. On the patient behavior side, which I think is an important one to understand, it's not just that they're using different apps and maybe going to ChatGPT or, looking at the AI answer they get at the top of the search results and then relying on that. That's one aspect of it. But the other thing that's changed a lot is that for years and years, everybody assumed that marketing was sort of happening in 3 stages. So the patient become aware of you, then considered you, and then converted. You had this like 3-stage marketing that you've probably heard people talk about before. And then other people call it top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. So the thing that we've learned over the last couple of years is it's not that simple. And the patient, there's like a messy middle where they may take up to 12 months to decide from when they first became aware of you to actually sitting in the chair and having a consultation. And that's important to understand, because what I hear all the time from practice owners is, oh, that's a dead lead. That patient inquired, but they didn't come back to us this week, and so they are a dead lead. Well, they didn't die, so they're not dead, and they were definitely interested at the time, so they're probably still in their consideration phase, which we know can take a year. And that process, Google did a huge study on this, and they called it the 0 moment of truth, ZMOT. Now, traditional marketing had the first, second, and third moments of truth, which is what I just said, like awareness, consideration, and conversion. But there's a 0 moment of truth, which is what we often assume happens is like, oh, they see your post on Instagram and they book it. But it doesn't work like that. They might see your post on Instagram, think that's interesting, forget about you, remember later, Google it, find you again, read your reviews, read a blog, get distracted, think about it, come back a month later, maybe they subscribe to your emails, so they get your email. There's this whole mess in the middle, and that's called the zero moment of truth. And one of the things that you have to do now to navigate that is to not just rely on a single marketing channel. Because if you do, you're missing this whole process of research that goes on across all these different platforms. So you have to build this kind of ecosystem around your business that's always on across different channels, so that when they are ready to convert, you have got some content in front of them that is the stimulus, the trigger when they're ready. So, for example, you might, instead of just, and please don't just rely on Instagram. I know I always say that, but please stop doing it. You have to build a much more diverse ecosystem. So you might have content on YouTube. You might have a fantastic website that answers trending patient questions. You might publish content on other people's websites. You might have other social platforms going on, etc. So that's how you navigate this kind of zero moment of truth. And it's changing your mindset away from, we had an inquiry, we called them a couple of times and they haven't booked in, so they're dead to us now. It's not the case. You need to get them into your ecosystem, even if you just get their email address, or in technical terms, you can retarget them. Once they've been to your website or onto your social channels, you can retarget them with paid advertising. Now they're in your ecosystem and they can sit there as long as they like. And you just have to make sure your ecosystem is up and running across several channels all the time. And then you will see this compound effect of all those people that previously would have been dead to you and now dropping in on a weekly basis. But it might take each individual 9, 10, 11 months to make their mind up. And that's sort of the new marketing model. I call it the black belt model for reasons that maybe become clear to people that know me. But yeah, that's what we're talking about now, is like build this ecosystem to navigate the new way that patients behave, because they're much more discerning. They're bombarded with information, so it takes longer for them to figure out who they can trust. And your job with your content, that ecosystem, is to make sure just a few things that they're going to know about you. Hopefully they start to like you, and then they almost trust you before you've even met them. And you can achieve that. This is another part of the ZMOT study that Google did, but they say that on average, in order to achieve those three things before you meet someone, you have to have put out 7 hours of content across 11 different touch points. So a touch point could be they read a blog, or they saw your Instagram post, or they read a Google review, etc. So 7 hours might sound like a lot of content, but it's actually not that much. You can produce that in a month or so without too many problems. And I'm happy to give a content strategy today that will give you enough content for the next 100 years. I guarantee it. So you can never tell me again that you're going to run out of content ideas. But once you're doing that, then you can achieve this kind of know you, like you, trust you. And if you have a marketing system that's bringing you people that already kind of trust you before you've met them, you don't get price questions, you don't get objections, you don't get people telling you what to do. They trust you as an expert. And I know you will hate when people come in and question your pricing, question the products you use, question even your techniques sometimes when they don't know. But if you're getting your marketing right and your content right in enough places over a long enough period of time, then you get the patients you want that trust you, and they're going to pay you what you deserve, and they're going to trust your treatment plan, which I guess is the dream.
So for the average clinic owner that's listening to this and thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, where do I start? I'm too busy treating patients. I'm sort of confused. What would your advice be for those that want to build this ecosystem?
I've got a dead simple plan, which we can unpack, right? And anyone can do this. So there's lots of things you can do in this ecosystem, technical things with advertising and all sorts, but to keep it super simple for anyone that can follow, let's just go through some steps to create the right kind of content and where to put it. So number one, in order to create the right kind of content that you can then put on lots of different channels, you have to understand what questions patients are asking online on any given day. So the way to do that is there's an amazing website called AnswerThePublic, right? And AnswerThePublic, if you haven't ever been to it, is this incredible resource. It's real-time data on what people are asking on any channel. So it will give you what they're asking on Google, Instagram, TikTok, now AI tools as well. So you jump on AnswerThePublic, put in a search phrase, for example, dermal fillers, London or whatever, and it will tell you, it will show you in this fantastic circular graph every single question people have been asking over the last 6 to 9 months on search or on social or in AI. Questions like, how long does it last? Does it hurt? How much does it cost on average? Or who's the best person for this? Every single one of those questions is a topic you can answer with your content. And you're probably already answering those questions every day in your practice and repeating yourself a lot, and you don't even realize. So you do all know what you're talking about. All you've got to do is get that list of questions, and usefully, you can download it and sort it by most asked down to least frequently asked. Start you at the top and write articles that answer these questions. So when I say article, we're now sort of at step 2. So you've got the data, you know exactly what people are asking. Now you need to write content that answers those questions. And that, for me, always should start with a really good, well-structured blog article. Now, we're talking about AI a little bit. Yes, you can use AI to help you, but for the love of all things holy, do not copy and paste articles from AI. It is god-awful stuff, absolute guff. But what it's good at is outlines, structure, the right kind of keywords to use in your headings. So use it to create an outline, but then write it yourself, please. And the reason for that is, 1, it'll be rubbish if you don't, but 2, more importantly, if you want it to rank online, ranking means it will show up when people search for these questions, then you have to hit a few key points with Google. So their algorithm, even though it changes all the time, for all of history, as far as Google's concerned, they've only ever really pinned their algorithm to this core principle called EAT, E-E-A-T. And it's, if the content has expertise, shows your experience, it comes from a place of authority and trust, E-E-A-T, then it will be shown to the relevant people. And you don't get that when you just go, hey, ChatGPT, write us a blog, would you? Because it comes out absolute naff, and it will put some crazy stuff in there, because as smart as AI is, it still makes stuff up. It hallucinates. So it wants to please you. So it will create an article that kind of looks correct. But if you don't check it, if you don't write your own experience and expertise in there, it's going to be no good, and it won't rank, and it's just more AI slop on the internet, which we don't need right now. It's too much. So once you've posted that article, then what you've got is a piece of source content which you can then repurpose across other channels. So one blog article can become 3 or 4 social media posts. You can chop up the captions, you can create some images to illustrate the point. One blog article can become your next email campaign. One blog article becomes a script for a video. So then you've got this ecosystem of content that's flowing from the exact questions that patients are asking, leading to the things that you offer, whether it's a condition or a treatment or a device. Then all you have to do is repeat that process for every condition you treat for, every treatment or device that you offer, and do that every week forever. And you will win the game of digital marketing.
Now, when you say blog, I remember blogs in the early 2000s. They were kind of boring, weird areas of a website where it kind of felt a bit like an old woman's magazine, where you sort of did like an article on something weird. So where do you put that? And what do you mean by a blog? And how do people use that to best rank on Google?
Yeah, so you place it on your website in an area called blog, and the best kind of websites for ranking this kind of content are built on a platform called WordPress. Others do work, but WordPress Google just loves it. So it finds it easy to crawl and to find content through WordPress sites. Your blog, it can be beautiful, can be custom designed, can be attractive, but ultimately it's about the content. And the more relevant it is, and the more well structured it is from a content scanning perspective, the more likely it is to appear in the Google search. And these days, we're getting asked all the time, quite rightly, how do I get myself or my clinic to show up as an answer in ChatGPT? And there's lots of snake oil salesmen out there selling AI optimization services and AEO and generative engine optimization. Sorry, guys, that's nonsense. And I'm using polite language. The data, as we said earlier, comes from Google. So when you're writing your article, you post it to your blog. If it's structured correctly, it contains the right key phrases, and your website is well built, ChatGPT will find it and place it as an answer, as will Google in their AI overview and AI mode that they've got now. One thing we do know, and one thing we've changed for content we're writing, is that AI is quite lazy. So if, let's say, for example, you tomorrow, Jake, go on to ChatGPT and you say, how can I find an amazing digital marketing company in aesthetics? It's going to give you some answers. The answers it will go and get usually come from blog articles or review sites or social media posts, etc. And it likes summaries. So when you've written a 2,000 word article, for example, what we've been doing is after we've written it, we do a TLDR version at the top of the article. So like a summary of what you're about to read. If you've only got 1 minute, this is what this is about. And then what we're finding is that ChatGPT really likes those, and it's using those and copying them and placing it as its answer and then linking back to the full article. So if you put that in the context of running your clinic and trying to attract patients, you'll write your articles that answer questions on dermal fillers. You'll put a nice summary at the top of every article. And then over time, once you do that on a very consistent basis, you and your practice and your content will start showing up in Google search, in ChatGPT, in AI answers on at the top of the Google search. Then you start to get quite a lot more traffic coming to your site from people who are quite high intent. You know, they're actively seeking help with a particular treatment or skin condition.
Okay. And how are you finding your customers respond to this, I guess, new way of thinking when it comes to updating their practice and the way they're approaching their marketing strategies?
So we have two types of client when it comes to that. Some we're coaching to do it themselves, and some we're doing it for them. So the ones where we're doing it for them, I think their main attitude is, as long as it works, that's great. Do what you like. But they kind of, what they want to do is make sure that the content reflects them and their expertise, which is quite right. That's why it works well. The ones that we're coaching, I think it is a bit of a journey because it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time initially to understand the process and to figure out what are the questions I should or shouldn't answer with my blog content and how to structure the content. It's easy for us because we've been doing it a long time, but to coach that part is takes a bit more effort. But if I can give a few tips, if you're going to go out and write your first blog articles, first of all, the question that you're answering should be the heading. So just keeping it super practical. That's going to really help Google tie it directly to someone that's searching for that. That question and phrase should appear several times within the article. And then the answer that you want to provide, or the solution you want to provide, or the next step you want to provide from that article should appear several times in that article too. And the whole rest of it should be helpful for humans. So it's tempting to just spam it with keywords and think, oh, I'm going to be number one on Google because it's full of the right words. But Google is a lot smarter than that these days. It understands whether this is going to be useful for a human, whether it's going to be educational, whether it directly answers the question, whether the rest of your website and your online presence looks like you know what you're talking about to answer this question. So if you structure it correctly and you keep doing it consistently, it actually becomes an easy habit. And when you start seeing the fruits of your labor in the form of inquiries from people who you've never met about the thing you just wrote an article about, and then they're sitting in your chair, then it really starts to make sense. And, for a lot of our clients, that's the sort of light bulb moment when they're like, yeah, I literally had somebody in my chair today that found me through that article we did about under eye filler, for example. And that's when it all kind of comes full circle. The strategy loops back to the whole goal, which is to grow the business, grow the patient list.
We found, at least here in Australia, I'm sure it was UK as well, that clinics had a bit of a tough time last year, economically, macroeconomics, inflation, blah, blah, blah. We covered that on many podcasts. But obviously, to work with a company like you or any other company who's going to help people with digital marketing, SEO, websites, it's not always cheap. So have you found that clinics are kind of reticent? They don't want to sort of put their money into that, and they're still just going to lean back onto social media? Because that's what often people do.
Yes. Yeah. So it comes up a lot. I think it's a lot of you don't know what you don't know as a small business owner. I always say, I use this phrase a lot, you're all accidental entrepreneurs. And you kind of don't know what you're getting into when you start a business. You love the clinical side, you want to help patients. You've been through med school, but nobody warned you about the business side of it. Nobody taught you. So it's like you kind of stumbled out of med school into a truck coming towards you called business with its lights on main beam. And you're like, oh, crap. So I think it's just all of the costs that come at you, like the software that you need or the different insurances or the other operational costs, and then your marketing are all seen as kind of something to be scared of. Whereas most of them, the first kind of mindset switch needs to be away from it being a cost and into it being an investment. And for it to be an investment, it needs to deliver a return. And so it's difficult for you to know who you can trust and what you can trust that's going to deliver a return for your investment. So that's the first thing, and that's pretty common. And then combine that with a lot of people that first come and speak to us, for example, at LTF. They're not at the point in their business where there's even the budget to pay for an agency. They're just getting started. They've laid out quite a bit of money on their clinical training. Maybe they've rented a space, they've bought the kit, and now they just want to turn a profit. And so they've got this really difficult chicken and egg situation, because if they paid out for the marketing, they'd start seeing new patients, but they don't have the capital yet to do that. But they're desperate to get patients in the chair, and they're kind of stuck on this flywheel for a little while, and they're going to be just reliant on one patient at a time, word of mouth referral, which is great, but it's a slow burn. It takes a while. So, up until recently, what we've been able to offer those kind of people is coaching. We do a lot of free education, so I'm always everywhere explaining exactly how you do this stuff. I don't hold anything back. If there's a few people that I meet, I would say probably 5% of the people that I've ever come to my talks or webinars are real action takers, and they become almost religious and they follow exactly what I say and they do it and they get the results. The other 90 to 95%, a lot of it maybe goes over their head, or they don't have the time or the inclination to kind of listen and write it down and do it. So we've done a lot of coaching, we've done a lot of free education. But this year we've got a new option for helping them out.
Excellent.
Touch on it at the end.
Yeah. You raised an interesting point around the chicken or the egg, or people not having the budget. And I think maybe it's important to point out that, part of starting a new business is budgeting and working out how much you're going to need to set up your business, how much you're going to need for 6 to 12 months without much cash flow. Maybe you need to be a little bit more modest on your fit out, but maybe you need to budget for engaging a company such as yourself. So I think a lot of this comes down to actually doing your due diligence and planning your business properly, other than, how great is my clinic going to look, and sort of think about things more holistically. I talk to a lot of people who ask me about marketing. I'm certainly no marketing expert. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. But one of the things that I see people sort of talking about is trying to engage a company to do their content creation. And I kind of see marketing as maybe two broad categories. One is the content creation, but then two is the distribution. How do you take that content and get it in front of the most amount of the right people that you're looking to attract? So I'm just keen to get your thoughts on those 2 points.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is broadly what marketing consists of. I think there's you can also break down the content creation into two parts. There's the raw material, and there's turning it into a format that's going to engage people. So I think the first part of that should always come from the practitioner. And actually, if you're talking about organic social content, we've always said you should really have someone in-house to be doing that. And if initially it's going to be you until you have a team or something, because whoever's capturing that raw material needs to be able to be in the practice, capturing the moments, the vibe. We can't do that. The second part of the content creation is, really high quality visuals, audio, lighting, editing, making it look really slick. That you probably do need some support with, but requires investment. So we've built like a bank of videographers that we trust. They're really great at that. And then the second part, the distribution, again, ideally, Dave, people would budget for that from the get-go. And I wish I'd met people before they set up their company so we could talk to them about that. But they come later, and they've already spent £200,000 on a laser machine and 200 grand on their fit out, and they're in debt from med school, and now how do I get some patients? So there is that aspect of it, and I personally think that not necessarily med school, but the training academies specific to aesthetics have a bit more of a responsibility to teach the business side of it, and I think there's a big opportunity for that. And if you have a training academy, and if you're listening, let's talk about that, because I think it's important to equip people so that they're not in the headlights out in the street and having to stress over this kind of thing. But the budgeting thing is a mindset shift, and it's an expectation setting process. So sometimes I've even met people that have spent a fortune on a physical premises. They plan to do a huge launch, but there's almost no budget for the marketing, or there is a budget for the marketing, but there's the expectation that they're going to be profitable in 2 months. And that's not realistic. If you've spent that much money and nobody knows about you yet, you have no footprint, no presence, no brand, you're not going to break even for a year if you've outlaid that. And then on the other end of the scale, if you're a 1 or 2 person practice working out of a home studio or a rented space, you've only got a couple of options, really. You're either going to use your own time and energy to do the marketing, which means working at night and weekends, or you're going to have to find the budget to pay somebody to do it for you. So, it is really difficult. I'm not diminishing that at all. I've been there. I've owned businesses from scratch. I've never had any funding to do it. I've bootstrapped everything I've ever done. So I don't diminish the stress of it, but I think there's a responsibility on the people that do know and understand to try to get to these people early enough so that they can create a realistic plan and a budget and understand the difference between a cost and an investment, and how to assess properly who you can trust and who you can invest in.
You touched on Google, how it all kind of works behind the scenes. And I remember one of our episodes with you, we sort of focused on SEO, but how's that changed in the last few years? Obviously, if you don't understand anything about websites, maybe this will go over your head. But if you've got access to your website like Squarespace or Wix or whatever, you can do some, little tricks behind the scenes, even as an amateur.
Yeah.
So what should people be thinking of? What is SEO, and what should people be thinking of?
Yeah, cool. So SEO, search engine optimization, is a fancy way of saying, how can I structure my website and write content on my website that Google will put in front of people when they make a search? So everyone knows about Google. It's now become a bit different because they've integrated AI into it. So we talked about that earlier. And now there's kind of other places people make their searches. But generally speaking, when it comes to your website, it's about making it super relevant to the people you want to attract. So it's tempting to have, all sorts of other stuff on your site, but you need to first understand who it is you want to attract. Like literally, who are they? How old are they? Where are they? What sort of income do they have? What kind of job do they have? Think about that first. That will help guide the next bit. And if you go back to the AnswerThePublic data we were talking about, that would help you understand which questions should I be answering on my website. So that's the first part of it. Is when it comes to SEO, it's not some black magic trick or crazy technical thing. It's about understanding exactly who you're looking to attract through search engines, and then writing content that answers questions they would have, that answers pain points they would have. So if you're a practice that's really interested in working with women going through menopause, you know exactly the kind of pain points they have, the kind of questions they're going to be searching for, and you can go and get them from AnswerThePublic, a whole list. Menopause symptoms, menopause skin, all these kind of things will give you a list of questions. Write content that answers them, publish them to your website. That's the first thing. The second aspect of it, which you sort of alluded to, Jake, is there is a technical element to some extent with SEO. And it's only that for Google to send people to your website, they need to know that the people they send there are going to have a good experience, because that's their customer. Like, they want their customer to have a good experience. So that means they will prioritize websites that load quickly, that are easy to navigate, that people don't bounce from. So like bounce means as soon as you get to the site, you go, ugh, and you leave. That's called a high bounce rate. So there's things you can do to affect those things. So you don't upload a 58 megabyte JPEG onto your homepage. That should be avoided, because that would mean it would take forever to load on most connections. You should avoid putting video directly onto your website. You would stream it through a window. So you'd have like a YouTube embed instead. You would ensure it's built properly. So if you're using a developer, that's their job. But if you're using one of the web builders, like you mentioned, Squarespace, you've got Wix, you've got others, they are a bit more bloated. So they're a bit heavier, slightly slower in some cases. So there's limitations of what you can do, but they give you a settings panel for your SEO. So what they take away with one hand, they give with the other. So you can't really make it more efficient as a platform, but you can change your SEO settings. And those are going to be things like your metadata. So your metadata, literally in the sense of any database, is describing what is this website about, what's this page about. So you have a meta title. That's the first thing that Google reads about any page, and you can change that. So for example, if you're posting a blog that answers a question about under eye filler, then you would have the question as the meta title, and it would be the on-page title. And the on-page title in code terms is called your H1, your heading 1. Mm-hmm. Those two things together, your meta title and your heading 1, are the first two things that Google reads and scans when it's thinking, what is this content about? Then the next bit is about the key phrases that are within the content. And then the third thing, which is super clever and no one fully understands how Google does it, but it understands the intent of the reader, and it wants to pair that up with content that helps them in this context. So if their intent is, they're just a student at university interested in under eye filler versus a patient that really wants to get some under eye filler tomorrow, there's a very different level of intent. And so your article needs to contain clues as to the kind of intent you're looking for. So you don't want 10,000 students looking at your blog. You'd rather have 10 patients that want to book in with you tomorrow. So you need calls to action in there. So that's the other part of SEO, is the intent part. So the call to action would be, and if you're interested in this kind of thing, you can book a consultation with Dr. Jake, and his availability is down below. In Jake's case, it's next Christmas. But you need a call to action to give that kind of intent. So that's like the last puzzle piece with SEO.
Fair enough.
What should clinic owners be using AI for? We touched a little bit on some of the things they can do in terms of research, but are there any cool tools, integration that they can sort of add into their practice to make them more efficient?
Yeah, there are. There's the warning is just be careful, right? Because it will still hallucinate, as I said earlier. So there are things like AI receptionists and call handlers and things like that. I've tested them. They're great until they're not. And that's the problem. They can hallucinate and say some crazy stuff. So they're not ready yet, in my view, to handle patients that are anything close to medical in terms of their need. So I think I'd be careful of that type of AI. But there's other AI that's really, really good. So, for example, we are using AI chatbots on a lot of practice websites that can learn about you and what you offer, the conditions you can help with, the treatments that you offer, etc. And every time we put one on a practice website, it increases inquiries by 10 to 15%. And ironically, I actually don't really like chatbots. I'd rather speak to somebody on the phone, but I do like data, and the data tells us that they work more than they don't.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, more and more generations that are coming up, not boomers like me, but the other generations prefer that kind of instant, just tell me this, tell me that, point me in the right direction. And we also see from the data that we have, most inquiries, online inquiries, come through after office hours, after 7 p.m. And so you need to have this thing that we call speed to lead, because that first sort of 5 to 10 minutes after someone's expressed an interest in you and your practice is gold. And if you don't have any touch point that gets back to them within that time frame, your ability to convert or ever see them as a patient drops off a cliff. So that's one of the most useful instances. You've got other instances of AI, for example, as we were talking about earlier with creating blogs. They're very good for ideation, creating an outline for your blog article. You can kind of train it a little bit as well on who you are and how you talk and your expertise. But still, the caveat there is don't just copy and paste what it gives you, because it's going to be guff. So you want to just use the outline from it. So it's about strategically using AI where it makes sense, where it helps, but not yet anyway, or probably ever over rely on it, because it can talk nonsense. It could get you in trouble or worse. So be careful with it.
Use but verify.
Use but verify. Building our new app, it's been a really interesting journey, because we've, bit of a tease here, we've baked some AI into it, both from a content perspective, but also AI agents, as they call them. So we've got like a little, it's not called Siri, but imagine a Siri but on our new app, and it will sort of help you. You can ask it questions and stuff, and even we can ask it questions of how to make the app better as we evolve it. So it's kind of an interesting journey.
Yeah, it's been a big paradigm shift for us, for sure.
100%.
You spoke about websites. They're more important than ever, but it's an ever-evolving, changing landscape. I mean, Jake and I were even talking about things that we need to do with our website. So how has it changed? What's the trends? What does a good website look like in 2026?
Yeah, so, I mean, the main reason they're so important, again, is, as we were saying, AI uses websites to provide its answers. And so the better your website is, the more informative it is, then the more likely you are to get placed in AI answers and into search answers, which is ultimately going to help you grow your business. In terms of websites themselves, how they're built, etc., it's a changing landscape there as well. So we are, like LTF, I'd describe as artisans. So we like build websites completely from scratch. Everyone's totally unique. They take, 3 or 4 months to create. It's quite a labor intensive process, and they're beautiful and they're exactly what the clinic owner wants. So it's like building your own house would be the equivalent. You buy a plot of land, you get an architect and interior designers, and you get it exactly as you want it, but it's quite spenny, right? It costs money. Now we've got other options. So there are web builders, platforms where you kind of drag and drop and create your own, and they are much cheaper. You don't get exactly what you want. You have to kind of compromise on a lot of things, and yours is going to look similar to quite a lot of others. And now we have AI. Again, it's rearing its head here into website creation. And again, there's compromises, but it also saves a lot of human labor on both sides of the fence. So it can help create. Now, the issue up until the end of this conversation with AI websites has been that you don't necessarily know what to ask of it as the prompter in order to get the correct outcome. If you're using just OpenAI, and I don't mean OpenAI the company, I mean just public AI models, then there's no specific knowledge in there about medical aesthetics, patients, things like that. And also whatever you pump into it is public. It's going to end up other places that you have no control over. So there are now ways to create websites using AI, but nothing specific until now for medical aesthetics.
Yeah, that's true. Until maybe what you're going to tell us at the end of this podcast.
Yeah,
potentially.
Maybe. Can't confirm or deny.
Now, we've had you on the podcast several times, and you said it at the start, you're not a massive fan of people just leaning on social media, but obviously, they have to spread, what they're doing and have multiple channels, like you said. So what should people be focusing on with social media? Just a little sort of, I guess, piece from your side of things, because I don't think your company manages people's social media channels. Is that right?
Well, we do actually, but what we've always said, which I was alluding to earlier, is that the bit that we can do is the distribution part. The raw material content should usually be done in-house. So for some clients, we can do that because they're not far from us. But clients we've got in other countries, they need to provide raw material, and we'll make it look good and distribute it. But yeah, I think it's never a good idea to just rely on one channel, but social is important. It's when we go back to that idea of having somebody know you, like you, and trust you, social is really good for that. It's almost built for that if you get it right. So I think it's probably not going to be a surprise what I say, really, but it should be authentic, and I mean really authentic, because that is the stuff that cuts through now. Yes, you might want to create some stuff that's really well lit and super slick on your organic social, but really that's more for advertising, which is, I see as two different things. You've got paid social, which is an ad campaign. It's got a specific purpose. It should be almost like a Marvel trailer. It's exciting and it's got a big call to action. That's advertising, and that's kind of the way we try to do the advertising side of it. And then you've got organic social, which is these people have found you, whether it's through search or they read your blog or saw you at an event or whatever. Now they're following you. That should be properly authentic, like capturing the moments, capturing what you really think, etc. And in those cases, sometimes the scrappier the content, the better it does. So I think the focus should just be on exactly back to that content strategy, answering the questions that your patients have. If you can do, I know that in some markets you've got your hands tied a little bit on what you can say, but
a little bit.
Yeah, in your case, behind your back and on one leg with an eye patch on, but which is not ideal. But you can still talk about patient experience. You can talk about, anything non-clinical, as long as you don't mention the products or the needles or whatever. It's about answering questions that you are allowed to answer with your content in a really authentic way. There are algorithmic, and I find it quite depressing, to be honest, but there are trends on social that get much more reach, and it shouldn't be that way. That's not how the algorithm should be built, but it is, and so we're stuck with it. So if you want to play that game, then you do need to have a strong hook that meets a pain point in the first 1 second of your video, for example. So it's like, aesthetic practitioner, are you struggling to grow your business? Sometimes you just have to do that crap, I'm afraid, just to get the attention of the algorithm, not the person, and then they'll watch the rest. There are ways that you can use AI for your editing and stuff like that that's attuned to the trends. So there's certain transitions that get more reach in some months versus others. It can get a bit nuanced and technical. If you want a quick hack for that kind of thing, then just go to this Explore tab in your Instagram. You're going to learn 2 things in that tab. One, that you've been looking at stuff that you shouldn't have been. And second, you're going to learn what's trending. So if you type a phrase in there, then sort by most popular, you're going to see what kind of content is getting all the views, and you'll notice commonalities between all of them. So if you type in there something to do with medical aesthetics or fillers or whatever, look at the most popular and scroll through a few of them, you'll see there's a commonality in how the video starts, what the editing style is like, maybe what the captions do on the screen. And if you mimic that, you're quite likely to get a lot of views as well. And I personally find that quite depressing, because then that becomes just an echo chamber of content that all looks the same. And I try to avoid that, which is why I'm not Instagram famous, but I don't really care. But if you want to be Instagram famous, if that matters to you, which is about as useful as being rich in Monopoly, by the way. But if you want to, that's how you do it. You follow those kind of trends, and you look at the most popular tab. But yeah, social's important. Ironically, if you focus more on your search engine optimization and your local search optimization, like the map pack on Google, you actually get people follow you on social from that, and they're better quality followers. So they're local to you and they have intent, rather than, a child from Indonesia or a bot.
But I'm right in saying in the last couple of years or year, I don't know, that Google now kind of reads your Instagram and the keywords and all that kind of stuff. So it is important to think about how they dovetail, they're not separated anymore.
Yeah, no, they're not. That ecosystem is very much tied together. If you go back to that plan of answering patient questions with your content and then publishing it across every channel, if your Instagram carousel version of that blog article that you wrote has those key phrases within it, and the alt text of the images in that carousel has the question that you're answering, it's now indexed by Google. It shows up in search. You can see that for yourself. If you know that you've written about something in particular in the last couple of months on Instagram and you go and Google it, it will show up. That Instagram post is in the Google search results, and by default, AI tools are using the same feeds, so it will show up there too as an answer. If I go on ChatGPT and ask, who is the most handsome and successful marketing expert in aesthetics, it'll probably come up with me, because I probably said that on LinkedIn. So it's kind of playing back to me.
It's hallucinating again, Rick.
Yeah, like I said, it says some crazy stuff. You can't trust it whatsoever.
Those are Rick's pronouns, handsome and brilliant.
Yeah, and I insist that you must use them.
So we've covered a lot of stuff, Rick, about AI, Google, your website, social. So, what's the solution for people to be able to tie this all together and make it work for them in their businesses, in their practices? And I guess, what do you have to offer that maybe will help with that?
Yeah. So if people don't know, then LTF is my agency, and we do this for people. Like, this is all we do for medical aesthetic practices all over the place. But as we said, we come at a cost. And unfortunately, about 8 out of 10 people we ever meet aren't ready for us. And we've always wanted to help the other 8 people. And so, as I said earlier, previously, that might be a bit of coaching, or we say come to a workshop and then they're out in the cold again until they're ready to afford an agency to do it all for them. But there's this gap. And there are a lot of practices and practitioners around the world that are below that line. They're at that early stage for quite a long time where they need the help, want the help, but don't have the budget for it yet. So for about the last 2 years, we've actually been secretly building something, and which is going to be live by the time this episode goes out. And it's branded the same as my book. So if you don't know, I have a book that I wrote called Black Belt Digital. And I think at last count, about 8,000 practice owners have that book. And it describes in detail how you can market your practice and gives you the steps and checklists, etc. Well, that then became the name of my workshops and webinars and things like that. And now it's the name of our platform, which will be essentially a self-service platform for anyone with a med spa, aesthetic clinic, dental clinic in any English-speaking market, basically. And it will, for the price of a coffee and a muffin every day, which is more favorable than paying for an agency when you're at that stage of business, it will do a number of things for you. So the first thing is, once you're a user, we have built our own AI brain. From the last 16 years of everything we've done, we've plugged it all into this platform in a private, what's called a language model. So we've built our own AI application. We've taught it everything we've ever done in terms of web design, ad campaigns, social media strategy, content plans, email marketing workflows, every talk I've ever given, every book I've written, every podcast I've ever done is in there. So it's like me on steroids. The
Super Rick.
that it does is, from a few simple inputs from you as the practitioner, it will build your clinic website for you. And it's doing it with everything we've learned about what works in clinics and for patient behavior. No two of them will look the same, because you can choose your own color palettes, typography, style, etc. So that's the first thing it does. The second thing it will do is that a lot of practitioners and practice owners are ambitious to become key opinion leaders and speakers and trainers. It will build you your KOL website, separate to your clinic website as well. And again, no two will look the same. It will also, both of those will have a basic level of search optimization done for you through there. It also has, as a separate component of the platform, around 16 hours now, but counting, of educational material. So there are over 80 learning videos in there on how to do your marketing from scratch. Every aspect of it, step-by-step process. Every video comes with templates, check sheets, downloads, so that you can literally follow along. It has a section in there of additional services, so partners that we bring in for your insurance or your clinic fit out or your clinical training, but every single one of them will be discounted for users of our platform. We've also had agreement in principle from a few brands and pharma companies that as we get up to a certain number of users, the platform will become a buying group. So we will be able to get discounts and special access to pricing tiers and commercial terms for products. So all pulled together, this will become like the engine for growing your practice. Now, there's lots of other softwares in aesthetics like booking systems and things like that. It's not that. This is purely focused on what we've always done, which is the marketing side. So it's going to produce your clinic site, your KOL site. It will host and maintain those for you ongoing. You can log in and add content whenever you want. It will teach you step by step how to do your own marketing, and it will give you access at discount to everything else you need. in terms of, and including other things like booking softwares and things like that. So it's pulling together a lot of things that we do on a done for you basis, but it's for people who are at that earlier stage who can't yet afford an agency to do it all for them. It's going to hold their hand and walk them through it, and it's going to give them a basis for growing their practice that they otherwise wouldn't have had access to.
Gosh,
that's pretty cool.
How much did you say it was going to be? Cost of a muffin and a coffee?
Yeah, so
a day.
Final pricing to be determined when we launch, but it's around, for the first 200 users who we're calling founders, they're going to get 10% off for life. So they're going to be paying just under £200 a month, or whatever the equivalent is in your currency. And then the people that the 201st user and onwards will be paying 10%-ish more than that. But it's quite a distance from where you are on an agency retainer fee. But obviously the difference is you have to put quite a bit of sweat in and follow along and use the templates and do things yourself until such time as you can afford to delegate the whole thing. But everyone that we've ever spoken to who's in that 8 people out of the 10 needs this. And so we've based it on that. And, I've been in the US, Canada, Australia, UK, speaking to practice owners all the time that they need the help, but they don't know where to start. And that's what this is for.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, well, if they don't have enough patience to be able to afford you guys full time or afford an agency, then they've got time to follow along and do the work because they haven't got the patience yet.
There you go.
Yeah,
it makes sense, right?
If you haven't got enough patience, you've got enough time to start using Black Belt Digital.
Exactly.
So,
There you go.
yeah, get off your butts. So obviously, when this podcast is out, your Black Belt Digital will be out, and we're hoping that it will also dovetail very closely with our app being out. So LTF will also be a partner listed on our app as well in our partner section. So it's all coming together, Rick. The master plan to dovetail the AI agents and your thing and our thing, it'll all be there.
Who would have thought back in like 2019, 2020, when we first started talking on this podcast, what we would have built by now and what sort of tech would be available by now? It's crazy. But the platform you guys are building, I'm not going to give anything away that you haven't given away. It does perfectly complement what we're doing because it's kind of two aspects of it. And yes, we'll be an active party on your IA platform for sure. And when this goes live, I think both will be available. As I said, the first 200 users get the very special rate for life because they'll be our founder members. And the only thing I didn't say, which is important to say, a couple of things. Every learning module on there has been CPD accredited. And from the get-go, it has 11 CPD points available as soon as you start. And that's just going to grow because we're adding more and more learning content all the time, and also other faculty members. So I'm going to bring in people that are experts on the sales training side, or giving the perfect consultation, or the financial operations side, etc. So we're just going to keep on adding bits that are all around practice management and growing the business.
Very cool. Well, obviously your download link or your link to get more information on your platform will be in the podcast description. If our app is out, then that will also be there. And if it's not, you can add your name to our waiting list for our app. So either way, go and check the description of this podcast.
Now, before we sort of wrap things up, we've got a couple of listener questions. Are these all from Samantha?
I don't know. You wrote the script.
Okay, we've got some questions. Samantha Shepherd sent through some questions. So if you don't mind, Rick, we're just going to ask a few of those. So the first one is there a better mailing system than MailChimp?
Oh, God, yeah.
And if so, what else can people be using other than that program which seems to drive people insane?
Okay. I mean, the answer is yes, and you guys are going to love it because it's Australian.
Oh, nice.
It's called Campaign Monitor.
Okay.
It's owned by a company called Marigold. But Campaign Monitor, fantastic. I've used it for like 15 years. It's the only thing we use in LTF unless someone forces us to use MailChimp because they've got it already. They're similar, but for me, Campaign Monitor is much more intuitive, easier to use, slicker, quicker. It's not as clunky. So yes, is the answer. There is a better one in my view.
Okay, fair enough. What are mass email platforms actually best used for?
Interesting question. Mass emailing people, probably. I'm gonna.
That's why Rick's the expert.
Okay, I'm going to interpret the question. How do you best do it without pissing people off and them unsubscribing? Maybe that's
right.
part
Yes.
of the question.
Yeah. That is a good question. Because I think sometimes people assume that sending more emails is going to get them more results, and it doesn't work like that. I think that the answer has always been to segment your database. So I'll give a quick example of a case study from a couple of years back with us. We took on a new client, and they'd been doing a lot of email marketing, but they weren't getting amazing results from it, and they were sort of losing faith in it. When we looked at their database, over 60% of the people on the list were over 50 years old. But then when we looked at the emails they'd been sending out, every single picture was of a 20-year-old. And so they were just losing people instantly with what they were sending. So what we did was we split the list into two. This isn't very sophisticated segmentation. You can do more, but this is a basic example. So we split it. Under 50, over 50, two lists. And for the over 50s, the imagery, the messaging, the language was relevant to them. And for the under 50s, it was for a younger demographic. Lo and behold, we quadrupled the amount of engagement and inquiries they were getting through their email marketing just by making it relevant. So I think the answer is relevance. It's not so much about frequency, and making it intuitive. So always have a call to action. It's fine to, send out educational content and things like that, but the whole point you're sending email is to elicit a response of some kind. So it should have a strong call to action, maybe sometimes with some kind of incentive, whether that might be you get free red light therapy if you book from this email, something like that. So those things just really work in terms of email marketing. And then there are technical things that stop you ending up in spam and stuff like that. Don't use certain words. So like free or naughty words or anything alluding to naughtiness. Don't use any of that in your email.
What the hell are these people sending?
I'm trying to be careful with what I'm saying here, but anything like that is likely to get filtered into spam, especially by Gmail. It's particularly sensitive to anything that it thinks might be dodgy. And then just using correct image formats, compressed file sizes so it loads quickly on a phone. Make sure your email is laid out for a mobile phone. Test it for people who are using dark mode on their phone as well. Mm-hmm. So sometimes people don't do that, and people who are on dark mode don't see any of your lovely content in your email, so they just delete it. There's lots of tips and tricks for email.
Excellent. No, good stuff. So wrapping up and maybe having a look into the future, how do you see the online patient experience or journey evolving over the next few years?
Yeah, it's going to be a mad roller coaster, I think, for the next couple of years in terms of the digital.
To add to that, what happened to the metaverse? I thought we were all supposed to be in virtual clinics and with goggles on and all that stuff.
I mean, I was promised a flying car by 2015. That didn't happen. So I think in terms of patient expectations, don't forget that all your patients are just like us. They also have access to AI, chatbots, AI integrated apps into everything they're doing in their work and at home and everything. So their expectations of what you can offer are going to increase on that side of things. So I think we will all be integrating AI internally and externally within the practice. So internally, I'm seeing some really cool things like note takers that are specific to doctors. They're super useful. It means you can focus completely on the patient, produce your write-ups in no time at all. Like we use them as well in our meetings. They're amazing, right? So we use one called Fathom. I know there are others. I think there's one called Jane that's specific to doctors. So internally, there's some great AI. Externally, for the patient, we talked already about chatbots. I think the booking process is ripe for AI intelligence. finding availability that's relevant to the concern or treatment that the patient has, that creates the right time slot with the right practitioner. All of that is right before AI-ness. And I think people are working on it. It's probably going to start pretty clunky and then it will get better. I think we already talked about the fact that patients are using AI to do their research on their practitioners, which means that us as the practice owners or practitioner need to be there as an answer, see above for the strategy that will do that for you. So yeah, AI is going to be the overriding thing from my perspective, but also let's not forget that the more AI there is in stuff, the more people will crave the human touch. And so let's not go all in on AI. Let's remember the thing that will make you different and that your patients will love is you. And so just use AI where it's useful and can save a bit of time, but don't rely on it 100%. Keep the human touch, keep it personal, do those nice little flourishes, have your signature scent, make people their tea when they come into your waiting room. AI is never going to be able to do that. Well, you could get one of Elon's robots, but who wants that in their practice? So yeah, I think keep the human touch, and that's going to be more valued from now forwards. The more people experience AI, they may have turned up at your practice in a driverless car, depending on where you are in the world, and so they're going to be craving a bit more humanity in the future. So let's not forget that.
Last question. If someone's listening to this, and we see this with many of our, people that we work with in our community of IA, if you're overwhelmed, if you're running a clinic, you don't know where to start, you're pulling your hair out, you just got no systems, no protocols, your marketing's terrible, where should people start?
I think a couple of places. One, you should join the new IA community as soon as it's live, because it's going to be mega, and it will have...
Thank you for the plug.
Oh, you're welcome. You pay me later. But genuinely, I can't think of a place that has all the things that you're offering in one place. Like, I got a brief glimpse of it before we started the podcast, and I can't wait to get in there. I think as a practice owner, it's going to have access to the events, the community, the answers that you're looking for, the discussions that need to be had in a secure space. For device and pharma companies, it's a safe place to communicate. So that would be a good place to start. Secondly, on the sort of marketing and trying to grow your business side of things, you got to go and grab my book, surely. So I rewrote it this year, so please help me out. Version 2 of Black Belt Digital is on Amazon, and there's also an audio book available now.
Did you do it yourself?
I had to sit in a cupboard for 3 days. It was hard work, trust me. It is genuinely me. It's not AI Rick. It is properly me on the audio version. And then obviously the platform we've just created is going to give people a self-service way of marketing their practice. But even if you don't read my book or use the platform, over the years, I've put out tons of free content on LinkedIn, Instagram. I've got a Facebook group called Black Belt Digital. Join my email list. There's articles on my website going back like 8 years on how to do this stuff. So just have a look. Feel free. Have a 10-minute chat with me. That don't cost you anything either. I'm keen to those people that are sort of stuck in the headlights. That's my favorite bit. Like, I love just helping people, just unlocking a few simple strategies, whether it's optimize your Google business profile so you start showing up in the local search pack. I would always start there if I was just setting up a practice, because people just neglect that and they don't realize how much you can do with it and how much that can drive business to you when you're just getting started, and it can all be done by you. It's not technical. So
great information. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Rick. Now, we did say at the start, there's going to be an exclusive other episode with Rick that's going to live on our app very shortly when we launch. So look out for that one. But to tease you, it'll be about how to successfully launch and integrate a device into your clinic. Now, we've kind of covered that ourselves before, but I'm keen to get Rick's digital perspective on that and see if there's any tips and tricks that we've missed before. So look out for that exclusive episode on IA Community when it's out soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rick. Always a wealth of information. It's always fun to have a chat and find out what's going on in your world. You're a very busy man, very innovative, really excited to test out your platform and have you hosted on our platform as well. So all the best and looking forward to catching up soon.
Well, I've got an idea, actually. Our new app has a live function, so we could basically maybe do a webinar with Rick showcasing and he can walk us through his new platform when it's available.
Yeah, awesome.
So let's do that.
I'm in. Boys, always a pleasure. And I hope we are together in the same room soon for a nice Negroni.
That would be absolutely wonderful. Take care, mate. Good to see you, and we'll speak soon.
We hope you enjoyed that episode, guys. To stay up to date with our latest news and episodes, follow us on Instagram, and we're now on TikTok.
You can also now watch our full video episodes on YouTube and Spotify. So if you like what we do, please give us a like and subscribe. Please also consider joining our Patreon for invaluable business and injectable education. Get access to our global community of like-minded professionals, hints and tips videos, bonus podcast content, and more.
All of our social links, Patreon, and contact information are in the show notes below, and we'll see you in the next episode.